Quilty is brought to you by
Baby Lock. Baby Lock sewing and long arm machines. From piecing to long arming for the love of sewing. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread. Perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Dear Stella. A unique fabric brand with modern style. Fairfield. Together, we can make beautiful things. Hovels Sewing. Cut to the point with Hovels Sewing. Moda. Make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Northcott. Cottons that feel like silk. Omnigrid. Providing quilters with specialty rulers and accessories for over 30 years. Hello out there in Quilty TV land. I'm Mary Fons, and this is Heather Kinion.
Hey, Quilty.
The last time you were on the show, I christened you co-host, so...
You did with the rotary cutter and everything.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So you're back on the show, of course, and you're going to take us through a really cool pattern. This is called Capsule Quilt. It's a... Do you like how I'm holding this? Is this a good... Is there a glare or anything? Okay. This is an interesting quilt. It's curved seam piecing, but the reason that it's kind of different is because the contrast is just enough, and the way the blocks are turned that you get these capsules or kind of pill shapes. I mean,
that's what it's called. It's named
called.
The Capsule Quilt after the
Yes.
pill shape that appears.
Exactly. So you can see that, and again, this is pretty low contrast. You can make it really high contrast. We're going to work with low contrast fabrics today, but it's how you turn these shapes.
There's only 2 blocks in the whole pattern, and it essentially, I've got them both here. They're essentially mirror images where there's squares, and then there's a light background Drunkard's Path block,
right?
And there's two dark background Drunkard's Path blocks.
Okay, so did you say there's 2 blocks?
Yes, this is one block, and this is the other. They're almost identical. They're just mirror images of each other.
Got it. And a patch. There's a square. There's a square as well.
So it's a 6.5-inch square in each block.
Okay.
And then, so 6.5-inch square, and then there's 2 dark background blocks and 1 lighter background, or lighter background.
Lighter, because again, these are pretty similar, but it still works.
Yeah, it just needs to be enough that you can see, and you can see in the pattern itself that's in modern patchwork. It's very subtle, dark solids that she's using.
Exactly. So let's talk about what comes next. What do you do?
Sure.
First?
So step 1 is you print out the template pieces, and it's just 2 template pieces. The Capsule Quilt Template A and Template B. Template B is cut out of the background fabrics only, and Template A is cut out of your colorful fabrics. In the picture there, it's a solid. We've got Day Sale, the line by Bonnie and Camille from Moda.
And one thing about printing out templates is important. Make sure your printer doesn't say like fit to page. Like those settings are really important.
Yes,
because
mine were wrong.
If it shrinks, it happens all the time. It'll shrink it to fit the page, or it'll do something funky, and you don't want that because then your measurements are going to be off. Now, if it's consistent across the whole quilt, it doesn't really matter as much.
This modern patchwork pattern also has a test block on the page you cut out the templates. And
Bam.
You measure it. If it's 2 inches, it's right. If it's not 2 inches, go check your printer.
Great. So, I'm not going to cut out this whole thing for time's sake, but, and I'd probably start down here.
Right.
And probably trim, because you can save part of this for other pie wedges.
Absolutely.
Right. So then this is a very simple, and I'd use the big rotary cutter on this. Take your time going around a curve. You don't need to, and I actually went over a little bit, so then I come in and trim. That happens to you, right? You overshoot. Okay, so I'm sorry. You continue.
Right.
You're the teacher today.
And I sometimes, when I'm working on a template that has a straight edge like that, in order to guarantee my straight edge, you can just use your ruler, line your ruler up. You can put the line there, the line on the side, and just down the edge.
That's very smart.
Got that. So you'd cut out the whole piece. These blocks will come out to be, and then you have a pie and a crust.
Do you need a pie?
I need a pie. I think it's on the floor.
Okay, you can get it. I'll distract them. Distract them. You need a pie and a crust for your block. Yeah, I mean, and that's typical if you've ever done a curved seam, Drunkard's path, or anything like
pie
that.
and crust.
Yeah. I totally did not see you going down and grabbing something.
That never happened.
No.
So you'd sew them together. There's a bunch of different methods. We've done a lot of quilty episodes. I've even been some.
Oh yeah.
Always fond of the creasing down the center, and you always put the pie block on the is going to be on the bottom as you run it through your sewing machine, and the crust block on top, because the crust block has the ability to wiggle and match up.
And why is that, Heather?
It is because of the way it's not exactly a bias,
right,
because it isn't straight, but it's cut on the curve, and the curve opens up the bias grain of the fabric.
Exactly. So you have stretch.
Yep.
Okay. And
this pattern is actually really nice for curved sewing, because they have set it up so that you will trim the block. The block is going to be too big.
I love that.
When you cut it. And for curves, this is especially great, because once you get your block sewn, it's going to be too big, and you will have to trim it down to the 6.5 inches.
That is a really helpful thing, and you have to be careful when you square up a block that you're piecing that isn't meant to be trimmed. Like if you do a block and it's not quite right, it comes out bad, and you're like, I'm going to square this up and make it square. A lot of times you'll cut off your seam allowance, you'll shave too much off, and that's bad. It's better to sew accurately, but on patterns that do this, where they want you to oversize it and then trim it down, it's really great.
And essentially you just cut it off the crust edge, not the pie edge, if possible.
Yes.
Essentially, you might cut off a tiny bit of the pie edge to make it actually totally square.
Right.
But mostly you're trimming off the crust edge.
I'm going to probably sew half of it, and we'll show you a little bit more about going into layouts. Yeah, great.
There we go.
Give it speaking of
Pincushion.
Thank you. Speaking of squaring up, Heather, could you talk to me about what kind of rulers do you have in your sewing studio nearby? Like, do you have a square up ruler, or like?
I only have, I think, one square ruler, and it's fairly small. I tend to use my big rulers. I have a ruler about the same size as this OmniGrid one that we have on set, as well as a longer one that's at least 2 feet long.
Oh, okay, cool. Do you have that 8x14 kind of size? I love that.
I do. That one probably is used more than any other ruler, just because it's the right size for almost everything.
It's the right size. I agree. I'm using this stiletto to help me keep my fabric in the right spot. Because when you're sewing curves, that's the key. You have to keep, zhushing, scooting your fabric over. Any other tips for curved seams?
I always slow down as I approach pins, and I go slow. It's like some people are like, it takes so long, I can't sew very fast on my machine. That's a plus, I think, with curves, because you want to go really slow. If you try to go too fast, you're going to not end up with a clean, lovely curve. You're going to end up with straight bits where the curve has been flattened out by your sewing.
You know what? No matter what I'm sewing, when I go more slowly, it looks better. I tend to rush through. You know this. You've seen my work over the years. I mean, I get snarls and snags and stuff because I go too quick. So this kind of forces me to slow down, and it's kind of nice. Okay, I'm almost at the end.
Yeah, and usually the key on curves is when you line up that centerpiece and you line up each end perfectly, the rest of it will sort of fall into place with some smushing.
Right. Oh, the smush. I love the smush. Okay, last pin to take out here. I don't sew over pins as a rule. I need to kind of use my stiletto to just keep that in line. Get in line. Okay. Well, it's pretty good. Okay. For you.
Alrighty. Now you'd simply press the curve open, which is usually really easy to do on these curve blocks because it wants to go. You did great.
Oh my God, it's perfect. That's the best one I've ever done.
Your ends lined up, and then this is where you would trim your block to 6.5 inches.
And be careful on this. You don't want to trim it wrong. I mean, you look at your pattern, get everything right.
Oh, I turned it the wrong direction. I want it this way.
Yep.
So 6.5 inches. Make sure. And it's nice if you have the 1/4 inch on your ruler, so you can make sure you have the 1/4 inch there to trim, and make sure you have the 6.5 inches that way and 6.5 inches the other way.
Cool. Trim this down, and then we'll take one last look at our block. Great.
And then we'll trim
the
it
other side
to 6.5 inches.
Do you use your iPad or your tablet in your studio a lot?
I do. It's great for inspiration pictures. It's great for pictures where you can see patterns. If you have a digital pattern like I did with this one, it was great. I just called it all up. I could move things around, look at exactly the part that I wanted to see.
It's fabulous. And there you go. You start building your capsule quilt just like that. Take your time, use pins, watch this show over and over again with Heather. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
Quilty is brought to you by
Baby Lock. Baby Lock sewing and long arm machines. From piecing to long arming for the love of sewing. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread. Perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Dear Stella, a unique fabric brand with modern style. Fairfield, together we can make beautiful things. Hovels Sewing, cut to the point with Hovels Sewing. Moda, make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Northcott, cottons that feel like silk. Omnigrid, providing quilters with specialty rulers and accessories for over 30 years.